The flowers hit the hospital floor with a sound that shattered my world. White roses, Sarah's favourites. The same ones Mark used to bring me when we first started dating. How foolish I'd been, standing in that doorway like some pathetic wife playing dress-up in her own marriage, watching my husband stroke another woman's face with the tenderness he'd forgotten to show me. I promise you, Sarah, I'll always be here. You mean everything to me. I should have never let you go. Those words. God, those words cut deeper than any knife could, because in 3 years of marriage, Mark had never once looked at me the way he was looking at her in that moment. Never once promised me forever with such raw emotion in his voice. Never once made me feel like I was his entire world. But there I was, the devoted wife, bringing flowers to my husband's ex-girlfriend. How's that for irony? Let me back up and tell you how I became the biggest fool in my own love story. It started 3 months earlier. Mark came home from work with that expression. You know the one. The same face men make when they're about to ask for something they know they shouldn't. I was making dinner, humming along to some song on the radio, completely oblivious to the fact that my marriage was about to become a 3-person circus act. Honey, I need to talk to you about something, he said, loosening his tie. That tie I'd bought him for his birthday, the one he said made him feel confident and powerful, the one he was now fidgeting with like a guilty schoolboy. Sarah's sick, he continued, and my heart actually skipped a beat. Not from concern, from pure instinctive dread. You know how animals sense earthquakes before they happen. That's what this felt like. The ground was about to shift beneath my feet, and every cell in my body knew it. Sarah Chen, the ex-girlfriend who'd broken up with Mark 6 months before we met, the one he described as the one who got away during one of our early dating conversations. A comment that should have been a red flag the size of Texas, but I was too smitten to see it. She has cancer, Mark said, and I watched his face crumble. Aggressive, stage 3, she doesn't have anyone else. The lie came so easily to him. The concern in his voice was so genuine. If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought he was just being compassionate. But I did know better. I knew my husband. I knew the way his jaw tightened when he was holding back emotions. I knew the way his hands moved when he was trying to convince himself as much as me. What do you need? I asked, because that's what good wives do. They ask how they can help, instead of why their husband's ex-girlfriend is suddenly their problem. I need to help her through treatment. She's got no family here, no close friends. I can't just abandon her when she's fighting for her life. Abandon her. Interesting choice of words from a man who'd married someone else 3 years ago. I should have said no. I should have put my foot down, demanded boundaries, protected my marriage. Instead, I said the words that would haunt me for months. Of course, honey, we'll get through this together. We. As if I was part of this equation. As if I was anything more than the obstacle standing between Mark and his grand redemption arc. The hospital visits started small. 1 hour here, 2 hours there. Mark would come home and tell me about Sarah's treatments, her progress, her fears. He spoke about her with the kind of detailed intimacy that made my stomach turn. He knew what made her smile during chemo. He knew exactly how she liked her coffee. He knew which nurses she got along with and which ones annoyed her. When was the last time he'd paid that much attention to me? She's so brave, he'd say, sitting at our kitchen table, still wearing the cologne that now permanently smelled like hospital disinfectant. You should see how she handles everything. She never complains, never feels sorry for herself, unlike me, apparently. Because every time I felt a flicker of jealousy, every time I wanted to point out that maybe his wife deserved some of his attention too, I was being selfish. I was being small and petty while a woman was literally fighting for her life. The visits got longer. Full afternoons became entire evenings. Mark would text me from the hospital. Sarah's having a rough night. I'm going to stay until she falls asleep. Sarah's scared about tomorrow's treatment. I can't leave her alone. Sarah asked me to stay. She trusts me. Trust. That word started showing up a lot in his explanations. Sarah trusted him. Sarah needed him. Sarah. Meanwhile, I was home making dinner for one, watching Netflix alone, going to bed by myself more nights than not. I was living like a single woman while legally married to a man who was playing house with his ex-girlfriend 6 blocks away. The breaking point should have been our anniversary, 3 years of marriage, and I'd planned everything perfectly. Reservations at the restaurant where he'd proposed, a new dress that made me feel beautiful, a gift I'd been saving for a vintage watch he'd admired months ago. I was putting on lipstick when his phone rang. Sarah's ringtone, yes, she had her own special ringtone. Some soft, melancholy tune that made her sound like the heroine of a tragic love story. I have to go, Mark said, barely looking at me. Sarah's having complications. The doctors are worried. It's our anniversary, I said quietly, not angry, not demanding, just a simple statement of fact. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is life or death. Sarah needs me right now. Sarah needs me. Not Sarah needs help or Sarah needs support. Sarah needs me, specifically me, Mark, the man who'd promised to love, honour and cherish me above all others until death do us part. I sat in that restaurant alone for 2 hours, making excuses to the waiter, pretending I wasn't the woman whose husband had chosen his ex-girlfriend over their anniversary dinner. I ordered the salmon, ate half of it, and paid the check with tears in my eyes. When I got home, I found Mark's gift on the dresser, still wrapped, still waiting for a moment that would never come. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to stop being the understanding wife. I decided to stop being the bigger person. I decided to see for myself what was really happening in that hospital room. Which brings us back to those flowers. Those damn white roses that I'd bought with such good intentions, believing I was being mature and supportive, believing I was showing the world what a confident, secure woman looked like. Instead, I was walking straight into the most devastating moment of my marriage. The scene that greeted me in that hospital room wasn't just intimate, it was sacred. Mark was holding Sarah's hand, stroking her face, whispering promises that should have been mine. And Sarah, God, Sarah was looking at him like he was her whole world, like he was the answer to every prayer she'd ever whispered in the dark. But it was what happened next that changed everything. What happened when Sarah's eyes met mine over Mark's shoulder? She smiled. Not a guilty, caught in the act smile. Not an embarrassed, oops, didn't see you there smile. She smiled like she'd been waiting for me to walk through that door. Like this whole scene had been performed for my benefit, and in that moment, I realised something that would haunt me for weeks. This wasn't just about Mark choosing her over me. This was about Sarah orchestrating the whole thing. This was about a woman who'd lost the man she wanted, and had spent 3 years figuring out how to get him back. The flowers slipped from my fingers, and Mark spun around, his face going white as he saw me standing there. It's not what it looks like, he started, but I was already walking away, because it was exactly what it looked like. It was my husband choosing another woman. It was my marriage ending in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. But here's what Mark didn't know as he called my name down that hospital corridor. Here's what Sarah didn't know as she watched me walk away with that satisfied smile on her face. I wasn't running away to cry. I wasn't running away to fall apart. I was running away to plan. The drive home was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Not because I was crying. I was surprisingly numb. Not because I was planning some dramatic confrontation. I was way past that. The drive was long because I was thinking. Really thinking. For the first time in 3 months, my mind was crystal clear. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made 3 decisions that would change everything. First, I was done being the fool. Second, I was going to find out exactly what Sarah Chen was really up to. And third, Mark was going to pay for making me feel like a stranger in my own marriage. I walked into our house, the house where Mark and I had planned our future, where we'd painted the guest room yellow because we'd hoped it would be a nursery someday, and I felt nothing. No attachment, no sadness, no regret. It was like walking into a hotel room. My phone buzzed. Mark, of course. Where did you go? We need to talk. Sarah's asking about you. Sarah's asking about me. Even in his damage control, it was still about her. I deleted the message without responding. The next text came 5 minutes later. I am coming home. We need to discuss what you saw. What I saw. As if I'd misinterpreted some innocent moment instead of watching my husband make love. Promises to another woman. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle we'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat down at my laptop. If Mark wanted to play games, I was going to learn the rules first. LinkedIn was my first stop. Sarah Chen, Marketing Director at Pinnacle Solutions. Graduated from Northwestern, same as Mark. Interesting. I'd never known they'd gone to the same college. Funny how that detail never came up in all his stories about her. I scrolled through her profile. Professional headshots, achievement posts, company updates, nothing personal. Nothing that suggested a woman fighting for her life. In fact, her last post was from 2 weeks ago. A cheerful update about a successful product launch, not exactly the social media presence of someone facing a terminal diagnosis. Facebook was more revealing. Sarah's profile was private, but her profile picture told a story. It was recent. I could tell from the hairstyle, the same one she'd had in the hospital bed. But here's the thing. She looked healthy. Glowing, even. Her skin had that dewy quality that comes from expensive skincare routines, not chemotherapy. I was deep in my investigation when I heard Mark's key in the lock. Game time. We need to talk, he said, walking into the living room, where I sat calmly with my wine and laptop. Do we? I asked, not looking up from my screen. What you saw today, it wasn't what it looked like. Mark, I saw you holding another woman's face and promising her forever. What exactly was it supposed to look like? He sat down across from me, running his hands through his hair. Sarah's scared. She's dying and she's scared. Sometimes people need comfort, need to hear that they're not alone. And you're the only person who can provide that comfort. I'm the only person she trusts. There it was again. Trust. The magic word that apparently justified everything. How convenient, I said, closing my laptop. Tell me something, Mark. When was the last time you held my face like that? When was the last time you promised me forever with that much emotion in your voice? He looked genuinely confused, as if the question didn't make sense. That's different. You're not dying. No, I'm just your wife. Apparently, that's less important than being your ex-girlfriend with cancer. Don't be ridiculous. Ridiculous. The word hit me like a slap. I was being ridiculous for expecting my husband to prioritize our marriage over his ex-girlfriend's emotional needs. You're right, I said, standing up. This is ridiculous. All of it. I walked upstairs, and Mark followed, still trying to explain, still trying to justify. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was planning. That night, while Mark returned to the hospital, Sarah's having a panic attack about tomorrow's treatment, I made a phone call that would change everything. Jenny, it's me. I need a favour. Jenny Walsh had been my college roommate, my maid of honour, and now a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, the same hospital where Sarah was receiving treatment, the same hospital where my marriage was slowly dying. What's wrong? Jenny asked immediately. She could always read my tone. I need you to tell me about a patient. Sarah Chen, cancer patient, been there about 3 months. You know I can't share patient information. I'm not asking for details. I just need to know, is she really dying? There was a long pause. Why are you asking me this? Because she's been sleeping with my husband under the guise of needing emotional support through her terminal illness. Another pause. Longer this time. Meet me for coffee tomorrow, Jenny said finally. And bring tissues. You're going to need them. I didn't sleep that night. Mark came home around 3 a.m., smelling like hospital soap and Sarah's perfume. He slipped into bed beside me, probably thinking I was asleep. He was wrong. I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until my coffee date with Jenny. The next morning, Mark was already gone when I woke up. No note, no explanation. Just an empty coffee mug in the sink and the lingering scent of his cologne. I met Jenny at our usual spot, a little cafe downtown where we'd spent countless hours during college planning our futures. Back then, I'd imagined a life with a man who'd love me unconditionally, who'd choose me every single day. How naive I'd been. Okay, Jenny said, settling into the booth across from me. Tell me everything. I told her about the hospital visits, the missed anniversary, the scene I'd witnessed. Jenny listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. I need to know if she's really dying, I finished, because if she is, then I'm the worst wife in the world for being jealous. But if she's not, Jenny said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected as much. She's not dying? I repeated. Not even close. Sarah Chen has stage 2 breast cancer. Very treatable, excellent prognosis. She's responding beautifully to treatment. Her oncologist expects a full recovery. Then, why is Mark acting like she's on death's door? Jenny's expression darkened. Because that's what she's telling him. And everyone else who'll listen. She's been playing up the severity of her condition, making it sound terminal when it's not. She's been manipulating everyone's emotions, including the medical staff. Can she do that? Lie about her prognosis? She's not technically lying. She's just emphasizing the scary parts and downplaying the positive aspects. And she's been very selective about which family members and friends she shares the real information with. I felt sick. She's been lying to him. More than that, Jenny said, leaning forward. She's been manipulating him, using his guilt and compassion against him. And from what you've told me, it's working perfectly. How do you know all this? Because I've seen her medical records, because I've watched her interact with other patients, because I've seen this kind of manipulation before. Jenny paused. And because she asked me about you. What? Last week, she asked me if I knew Mark's wife, if I knew what you were like, if I thought you were the type to cause problems. She was fishing for information about you. The pieces clicked into place. Sarah hadn't just been manipulating Mark. She'd been researching me, preparing for the moment when I'd inevitably discover what was happening. There's something else, Jenny continued. Something you need to know before you decide what to do next. What? She's been posting on social media, private posts only visible to certain people, photos of her and Mark at the hospital, captions about finding love in the darkest moments, and grateful for second chances. She's been telling people that you two are having marital problems, that Mark is realizing he married the wrong woman. I stared at Jenny, unable to process what I was hearing. She's been building a narrative. Exactly. One where she's the tragic heroine and you're the cold, unsupportive wife who can't handle her husband showing compassion to a dying woman. But she's not dying. No, she's not. But everyone believes she is because that's the story she's telling. I left that coffee shop with my entire world shifted. Sarah wasn't just the other woman. She was a master manipulator who'd orchestrated the entire situation. She'd lied about her prognosis, manipulated Mark's emotions, and was actively working to destroy my marriage while painting herself as the victim. But here's what Sarah didn't know. I wasn't the type of woman who rolled over and played dead. I was the type who fought back, and I was about to show her exactly what that looked like. That afternoon, I made another call, this time to the best divorce attorney in the city. I need to file for divorce, I told her, but I need to be strategic about it. Very strategic. What kind of strategic are we talking about? The kind where I don't just leave my cheating husband, the kind where I make sure he and his manipulative ex-girlfriend face consequences for what they've done. I'm listening. Good, because I have a plan, and it's going to destroy both of them. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say, but they're wrong. The best revenge is served with surgical precision, perfect timing, and just enough public humiliation to make your enemies wish they'd never crossed you. Margaret Winters, my divorce attorney, was exactly what I needed. Sharp, ruthless, and completely unimpressed by sob stories. Her office overlooked the city from the 40th floor, and sitting there, I felt like I was looking down on everyone who'd underestimated me. Here's what we're going to do, Margaret said, spreading papers across her mahogany desk. We're going to file for divorce on grounds of adultery, but we're not going to serve him immediately. We're going to wait. Wait for what? For the perfect moment. You said Sarah's been manipulating social media, building a narrative. We're going to let her continue. The more evidence she creates of their relationship, the stronger our case becomes. I loved this woman already. But first, Margaret continued, we need documentation. Photos, messages, witnesses. We need to build an airtight case that shows premeditation and emotional manipulation. I can get you everything you need. Good, because we're not just going for a divorce here. We're going for a complete destruction of their credibility. When we're done, no one will ever see Sarah as the poor cancer victim again. They'll see her as the calculating manipulator she really is. The first part of my plan was simple. Give Mark and Sarah exactly what they wanted. Space to be together without my interference. That evening, when Mark came home from another emergency at the hospital, I was packed and ready. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a while, I announced, setting my suitcase by the door. Mark looked genuinely surprised. What? Why? Because you clearly need space to focus on Sarah's needs without worrying about my feelings. So I'm removing myself from the equation. That's not... I don't want you to leave. Don't you? I asked, tilting my head. Because your actions suggest otherwise. You've missed 3 dinners this week, forgotten to pick up the dry cleaning, and yesterday you called me Sarah during a phone conversation. His face went pale. He had called me Sarah, right there in our kitchen, talking about grocery shopping, and he'd said, "Thanks, Sarah," before hanging up. That was a mistake. No, Mark, that was a Freudian slip. That was your subconscious telling you where your heart really is. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. I'm giving you what you want. Freedom to be with her without having to sneak around. Use it wisely. I don't want you to go, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then choose, I said simply. Me or her, right now. Make your choice. The silence stretched between us. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, looked toward his phone as if Sarah might call and make the decision for him. I thought so, I said, walking out, but I didn't go to my sister's. I went to the apartment I'd rented 2 blocks from the hospital. The apartment with a perfect view of the parking lot. The apartment where I could document every single visit, every touch, every moment of their affair. Within a week, Mark had moved Sarah into our house. Our house. The house where we'd planned our future, where we'd made love, where we dreamed of raising children. He moved his ex-girlfriend into our bedroom, while I was graciously giving them space. Margaret was right. They were building our case for us. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything. Photos of them arriving and leaving together. Screenshots of Sarah's social media posts from inside my house. She was even wearing my clothes in some of them. Videos of Mark carrying her bags, helping her out of the car, kissing her goodbye on the front porch. But the real goldmine came when I hacked into Sarah's private social media accounts. Don't ask me how. Let's just say I had skills Mark never knew about. What I found there made my blood run cold. Private messages to her friends, detailing her entire plan. Screenshots of texts with Mark showing her manipulating every interaction. Photos of them together with captions like, "Phase 1 complete, the wife is gone," and "He's even better than I remembered." But the most damning evidence was a voice message she'd sent to her sister. You should have seen his face when I told him I was dying. He completely fell apart. Men are so easy to manipulate when you know which buttons to push. His guilt complex is going to make this so much easier than I thought. I had her. I had them both. The next phase of my plan required perfect timing. I waited until Mark's mother was visiting from out of town. I waited until Sarah had posted 3 more social media updates about finding love in the darkness and grateful for second chances with my soulmate. I waited until they were comfortable, secure, convinced they'd won. Then I struck. The divorce papers were delivered on a Thursday morning while Mark was at work and Sarah was at her treatment appointment. The process server handed them to Mark's mother, who was watching the house while they were gone. Margaret had insisted on specific wording in the papers, not just irreconcilable differences or simple adultery charges. We went for fraud, emotional manipulation, and conspiracy to destroy the marital union through deliberate deception. The accompanying documentation was 47 pages long. Photos, screenshots, medical records showing Sarah's real prognosis, witness statements from Jenny and other hospital staff, and a complete timeline of their affair. But the real masterpiece was the letter I'd written to accompany the legal documents. A letter that would be read aloud in court, that would become part of the public record, that would destroy both of their reputations forever. To my husband, Mark, and his accomplice Sarah, it began. By the time you read this, you'll know that I've discovered your elaborate scheme. You thought you were manipulating a naive, trusting wife. Instead, you were playing games with a woman who spent years in corporate strategy, who knows how to research, plan, and execute complex operations. You picked the wrong target. Mark called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Sarah sent me a series of increasingly desperate messages. I screenshotted them for evidence and deleted them without responding. The coup de grace came the next day. I'd arranged for a private investigator to follow them to the hospital to document their next visit. What he captured was perfect. Mark and Sarah laughing together in the parking lot. Sarah looking completely healthy. Mark carrying shopping bags instead of medical supplies. But the real prize was the audio recording. The PI had used a long-range microphone to capture their conversation as they walked to the car. "Do you think she suspects anything?" Mark asked. "Who cares? She's gone. She practically handed you to me on a silver platter," Sarah replied. "By the time we're done, everyone will see her as the cold, heartless wife who abandoned her husband during my time of need. What if she fights the divorce? Let her try. Who's going to believe her over a cancer patient? I've got everyone's sympathy. She's just the bitter ex-wife." They had no idea the conversation was being recorded. They had no idea that their entire relationship was about to be exposed to the world. The audio recording became Exhibit A in our divorce proceedings. Margaret had copies sent to Mark's employer, Sarah's workplace, and both of their families. She also had copies sent to the local news stations, along with a press release about social media manipulation and marriage fraud. The story broke on a Tuesday. "Local woman uses fake terminal diagnosis to steal married man" was the headline. The article included photos of Sarah at the hospital looking healthy, screenshots of her social media posts, and excerpts from the recorded conversation. By Wednesday, Sarah had been fired from her job for conduct detrimental to company reputation. Mark had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into his judgment and character. But the real justice came when the story went viral. #SarahChenScam started trending on Twitter. Women across the country began sharing their own stories of manipulation and betrayal. Sarah became the face of female manipulation, the cautionary tale that people shared to warn others. The harassment got so bad that Sarah had to delete all her social media accounts. She couldn't go to the grocery store without being recognised. She couldn't continue her cancer treatment at the same hospital because the staff knew what she'd done. Mark tried to reach out to me once more. A pathetic, rambling voicemail where he claimed he'd been manipulated and taken advantage of, where he insisted he still loved me and wanted to work things out. I saved the voicemail, but not for sentimental reasons. I saved it because it would be useful in court when we discussed alimony and asset division. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for the following month, but I wasn't planning to wait that long for my ultimate revenge, because what Mark and Sarah didn't know was that I'd been planning something much bigger than a divorce, something that would ensure they never recovered from what they'd done to me, something that would make them both pay for the rest of their lives. 3 weeks before the divorce hearing, I was sitting in my new corner office overlooking the city when my phone rang. The caller ID made me smile for the first time in months. Detective Maria Santos, Fraud Division. "Mrs. Patterson? We need to talk." You see, while everyone was focused on the divorce drama and the viral social media scandal, I'd been working on something much more permanent, something that would ensure Mark and Sarah's punishment lasted a lifetime. "I've reviewed the evidence you submitted," Detective Santos continued. "The medical fraud case you've built is impressive. We're ready to move forward with charges." Medical fraud. 3 beautiful words that would change everything. Let me explain what Mark and Sarah didn't know while they were busy playing victim and trying to salvage their reputations. While they were hiding from reporters and dealing with online harassment, I was building a federal case against them. Insurance fraud is a serious crime. When someone lies about their medical condition to receive benefits they're not entitled to, that's fraud. When someone's boyfriend helps them submit false claims and provides emotional testimony to support those claims, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. Sarah had been billing her insurance company for terminal cancer treatments for a condition that was never terminal. She'd been receiving disability benefits for a prognosis that was completely fabricated. And Mark had been helping her, signing affidavits as her medical power of attorney, supporting her claims with false testimony about her condition. The total amount? Over $400,000 in fraudulent claims over 6 months. But here's where it gets really interesting. Remember when I told you I'd done my research? What I discovered about Sarah's medical records wasn't just that she'd been lying about her prognosis. It was that she'd been lying about her entire medical history. Sarah Chen had a prior bankruptcy. 3 years ago, right around the time she and Mark broke up, she'd filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy due to credit card debt and medical bills from a previous minor health scare. The bankruptcy had been discharged, but it left her with damaged credit and limited financial options. Her cancer diagnosis came at a very convenient time, right when she was struggling financially, right when she was looking for a way to get back at Mark for choosing me over her, right when she needed a reason to reconnect with her ex-boyfriend, who was now married to someone else. The fraud investigation revealed something even more damning. Sarah had been researching insurance fraud techniques for months before her diagnosis. Her internet search history, subpoenaed by the FBI, showed searches for how to maximize cancer disability benefits, terminal diagnosis versus treatable cancer insurance, and emotional manipulation tactics for medical situations. She'd planned the entire thing. The exaggerated symptoms, the false prognosis, the emotional manipulation of Mark, the destruction of my marriage, it was all premeditated. The FBI arrested Sarah on a Tuesday morning. They arrested Mark the same day at his office. The charges were extensive: insurance fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and my personal favourite, racketeering. Yes, racketeering. Because what they'd done wasn't just lie about medical conditions. They'd created an entire criminal enterprise designed to defraud insurance companies and destroy my marriage for financial gain. The media had a field day. Local cancer faker arrested in $500,000 fraud scheme was the headline. The story included photos of Sarah being led away in handcuffs, looking nothing like the fragile cancer patient she'd pretended to be. But the real satisfaction came when the full scope of their scheme was revealed in court. The prosecutor laid out the entire timeline: how Sarah had researched fraud techniques, how she'd manipulated her medical records, how she'd convinced Mark to help her submit false claims, how they'd used my absence from the marriage to cover their tracks. Mark's defense attorney tried to argue that he'd been manipulated, that he was another victim of Sarah's schemes, but the evidence showed otherwise. Text messages revealed that Mark had known about the insurance fraud from the beginning. He'd helped Sarah research which claims would be most profitable. He'd even suggested ways to make her condition appear more severe to maximize benefits. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted, wasn't just an adulterer. He was a criminal. The sentencing hearing was everything I'd hoped for and more. Sarah received 8 years in federal prison. Mark received 6 years. Both of them were ordered to pay full restitution to the insurance companies, plus fines and court costs. But the real justice was watching them realize that their elaborate scheme had cost them everything. Their freedom, their reputations, their futures all gone, because they'd underestimated the woman they'd betrayed. The divorce was finalized while Mark was in county jail awaiting sentencing. I got everything. The house, the cars, his pension, his 401k, everything. His criminal conviction voided any claim he might have had to marital assets. 6 months later, I was starting my new life when I got a letter. Prison mail, addressed in Mark's familiar handwriting. "I know you'll never forgive me," it began, "but I need you to know that I never meant for things to go this far. Sarah convinced me that the insurance money would help us start fresh, that we could pay you back and everyone would be happy. I was stupid and weak, and I'm sorry. I read the letter once, then fed it through my shredder. Some apologies come too late to matter. But this story isn't over yet, because while Mark was writing letters from prison and Sarah was adjusting to life in an orange jumpsuit, I was building something beautiful from the ashes of their betrayal. The insurance companies, grateful for my help in exposing the fraud, offered me a position as a consultant. Turns out, my skills in investigation and strategy were exactly what they needed to catch other fraudsters. I now make twice what Mark ever made, helping to investigate and prosecute insurance fraud cases across the country. I've become the woman who catches people like Sarah, the woman who makes sure that manipulative liars face consequences for their actions, the woman who ensures that innocent victims like myself get justice. But here's the final twist, the one that makes this story perfect. Last month, I received a call from the FBI. They'd been investigating a series of similar fraud cases across multiple states. Women who'd used fake or exaggerated medical diagnoses to manipulate ex-boyfriends and defraud insurance companies. The cases all had similar patterns, the same research techniques, the same manipulation tactics, the same legal strategies. It turns out Sarah wasn't working alone. She was part of a network of women who'd been sharing strategies, coaching each other on how to manipulate the system. The FBI had been tracking this network for years, but they'd never been able to build a case strong enough to prosecute. Until now. My investigation into Sarah's fraud had provided the missing piece of the puzzle. The evidence I'd gathered, the techniques I'd used, the connections I'd uncovered, all of it was exactly what the FBI needed to take down the entire network. 18 women across 7 states have been arrested. The total fraud amount exceeds $12 million. The ringleader, a woman named Patricia Monroe, had been running the scheme for over a decade. And I'm the one who brought them all down? The FBI has offered me a position as a consultant on their fraud task force. I'll be helping to investigate and prosecute similar cases across the country. I'll be the woman who makes sure that manipulative fraudsters like Sarah face justice. I accepted the position immediately. So here's what Mark and Sarah accomplished with their elaborate scheme. They didn't just lose their freedom and their futures. They didn't just destroy their own lives. They created their own worst nightmare. They turned me into the woman who hunts people like them for a living. Every case I solve, every fraudster I catch, every criminal I help put behind bars, it's all thanks to what they taught me about investigation strategy and the importance of never underestimating your opponent. Mark will be released from prison in 4 years. Sarah will be released in 6. When they get out, they'll discover that the world has moved on without them. They'll find that their reputations are destroyed, their career prospects are non-existent, and their victim, me, has become one of the most respected fraud investigators in the country. They'll realise that their moment of weakness, their selfish betrayal, their cruel manipulation didn't just cost them their freedom. It cost them everything, while giving me everything I never knew I wanted. The best revenge isn't just getting even. The best revenge is becoming so successful, so powerful, so untouchable that your enemy's worst nightmares pale in comparison to your everyday reality. I used to be a woman who trusted too easily, who believed in love and loyalty and second chances. Mark and Sarah killed that woman. But in her place, they created something much more dangerous. A woman who knows exactly how cruel people can be, who understands manipulation and deception, who has the skills and resources to fight back. They wanted to destroy me. Instead, they forged me into the weapon that would destroy them. And now, every morning when I wake up in my beautiful new home, when I look at my thriving career, when I think about the justice I've helped deliver to dozens of victims just like myself, I smile. Because Mark and Sarah gave me the greatest gift of all. They showed me exactly who I was capable of becoming.